There is a diamond that people believed was cursed. Everyone who owned it was said to lose everything: death, ruin, madness. And in 1911, the man who sold it, knowing its reputation, wrote the curse directly into the contract. His name was Pierre Cartier. He stood in an office in Washington and sold the Hope Diamond, one of the most feared stones on earth, and in the sale agreement he added a clause. If death struck the buyer's family within 6 months, the diamond could be returned. He was not warning them. He was using the curse to close the deal. That was the kind of man who built this empire. 3 brothers who were told they could have the whole world, and very nearly took it. This is the story of a family that rose from a small workshop in Paris to become the jeweler of kings, emperors, and maharajas, a name worth billions of dollars today. And it is the story of how, within a single generation, that same family lost all of it. Not to war, not to a rival, to something much quieter and much closer to home. To understand all of it, we have to go back. Because the Cartiers did not lose their empire in a disaster. They handed it away, and almost no one who wears the name today knows how. It begins in Paris in 1847 with a young man and an empty workshop. His name was Louis-François Cartier. He was 27 years old, the son of a craftsman, with no fortune and no title. That year he took over the small jewellery workshop of the master he had trained under on a modest street in Paris, and he put his own name above the door: Cartier. For a long time, nothing about it was special. Paris was full of jewelers, hundreds of them, all fighting for the same wealthy customers. Louis-François made and sold fine pieces, slowly building a reputation, surviving decade by decade in a city that tore itself apart with revolutions. But he understood one thing that would define the whole dynasty. He understood that in luxury, you do not chase the customer. You make the customer come to you. And the way you do that is by dressing the most powerful woman in the room, so that every other woman wants what she is wearing. To sell to the many, you first capture the few at the very top. Slowly, the Cartier name climbed. It reached the edges of the French court. It caught the eye of princesses and the newly rich. And when Louis-François passed the business to his son Alfred, and Alfred in turn raised 3 sons of his own, the family was ready to do something no jeweler had ever done. They were going to take the entire world. The 3 sons were Louis, Pierre, and Jacques. Each was gifted in a different way, and together with their father Alfred, they made a decision that would sound like a fairy tale if you did not know how it ended. They did not divide the business between them by department. They divided it by continent. Louis, the creative genius, would take Paris and conquer Europe. Pierre, the businessman, would take the New World and build Cartier in America. Jacques, the quiet one with the deepest eye for gemstones, would take London and the entire British Empire. 3 brothers, 3 cities. One plan to put a single family's name on the wrist of every powerful person alive. And for a while, it worked beyond anything they could have dreamed. Louis, in Paris, changed history in a way almost no one realizes. In the early 1900s, a friend of his, a pioneering aviator, complained that he could not check his pocket watch while flying. So Louis Cartier designed him a watch that strapped to the wrist. This was 1904. Before Cartier, wristwatches were considered a lady's trinket. Louis made them something a man of action would wear, and in doing so, he helped invent the modern wristwatch. That single idea would one day be worth billions. That watch was named the Santos, after the aviator friend it was made for, and it is still sold by Cartier to this day, more than 100 years later. The pieces that followed became legends. The tank watch, designed during the First World War, its clean rectangular shape said to be inspired by the armored tanks Louis saw rolling across the battlefields of France. The panther, which became the living symbol of the house, prowling across brooches and bracelets. Every one of these was more than an object. Cartier was no longer just making jewelry. It was quietly defining what luxury itself would look like for the entire 20th century, and every other jeweler was left to follow. And the buyers. This is where the scale becomes almost impossible to believe. King Edward VII of England called Cartier the jeweler of kings and the king of jewelers, and ordered a great many tiaras from the house for his coronation. Remember Pierre, the brother sent to conquer America. He understood something his competitors did not. He understood the theater of wealth. When he wanted the Cartier mansion on Fifth Avenue in New York, the story goes that he acquired the grand building not for a pile of cash, but in exchange for a double strand of natural pearls, worth a fortune at the time. He was not just selling jewelry, he was selling the idea that a Cartier object was worth more than a mansion. And people believed him. That same Pierre was the one who took the Hope diamond, the cursed blue stone, and sold it to an American heiress by leaning into its dark legend rather than hiding it. Danger, to Pierre, was just another way to make something desirable. The clients kept coming. Russian Grand Duchesses, American railroad millionaires, Indian Maharajas. In 1928, one Maharaja handed Cartier a fortune in gemstones and asked them to build a ceremonial necklace so vast it contained nearly 3,000 diamonds. It remains one of the most extravagant pieces of jewelry ever made. At its height, the three brothers had done it. There was a Cartier on the most important street in Paris, a Cartier mansion in New York, and a Cartier in London, holding a royal warrant. On the wrists and throats of the most powerful people on earth, in 3 separate corners of the world, the same 6 letters. Cartier. At the peak of the great age of empires, there was a period when Cartier was supplying royal courts across multiple continents at the same time, dressing coronations, weddings, and state occasions for royal houses across Europe, Russia, and the Indian princely states at the same time. A family name that began in an empty workshop in Paris now sat at the very summit of global luxury, and would in time grow into an empire worth around $9 billion a year in sales. But an empire built on 3 brothers has a hidden weakness. It depends entirely on the 3 brothers, and they would not live forever. If a story like this is holding you, take 1 second to hit that like button and subscribe to House of Ruin. Every empire we open up here looks flawless from the outside, a name the whole world knows and trusts. Our job is to show you what is buried underneath it. The betrayal, the loss, and the ruin the advertising was built to hide. Now, back to the 3 brothers. They had conquered the world. What none of them understood was that the very thing that made them great was about to become the thing that destroyed everything they built. The weakness was this: The empire was 3 men, and it had no plan for what came after them. The brothers had children, but the magic of Cartier had never been the name alone. It had been Louis in Paris, Pierre in New York, Jacques in London. 3 rare talents working in perfect balance across 3 continents. That could not simply be inherited. Genius does not pass down a bloodline on command. The first crack came with the war. The Second World War tore through Europe, scattered the family, and disrupted the business Louis had spent a lifetime building in Paris. The world the Cartiers had dressed, the world of tsars and emperors and grand duchesses, was being swept away forever. Empires were falling. Their customers were vanishing into history. And then, within a few short years, the pillars themselves began to fall. In 1942, in the middle of the war, 2 of the 3 brothers died within months of each other. Louis, the creative soul of the entire house, the man who invented the wristwatch and defined the Cartier style, gone. Jacques, the gemstone master of London, who had traveled to the Persian Gulf and India to source the rarest stones on Earth, gone in the same year. 2/3 of the empire's beating heart stopped almost at once. Think about what that meant. The genius of Cartier had never been written down in a manual. It lived in the minds and the eyes and the hands of 3 specific men. And now 2 of them were simply gone. And everything they knew went with them. Only Pierre, the businessman, was left. He held the pieces together for a while longer, running what he could. But the balance that had made Cartier magical was broken forever. And when Pierre himself died in 1964, the last of the 3 brothers was gone. Now the empire passed fully to the children, and here the story turns quiet and sad and final. The next generation was not the last. There was one, Jacques' son, Jean-Jacques Cartier, running the London branch, who had real talent and truly cared. But he was one man, holding one city, inside a family that was losing its will to hold on. The heirs across the 3 branches did not share the founder's single vision. They were separate people, running separate companies in separate countries, with separate interests. The unity was gone. The hunger was gone. And slowly, the family began to let go of the thing their name was written on. What happened next was not a dramatic collapse. There was no scandal, no crime, no single villain. And that, in a way, is what makes it so haunting. Between 1962 and 1974, the Cartier empire was quietly taken apart and sold. It did not fall all at once. It fell in pieces, exactly along the lines the 3 brothers had drawn. The Paris branch was sold. The New York branch was sold. The London branch, the last one held by an actual Cartier, was sold. 3 separate companies, once bound by blood into a single global empire, were carved off one by one and handed to outside investors and financiers. The family that had divided the world between 3 brothers now watched that world be divided again, this time among strangers. Jean-Jacques Cartier, the last family member to run a branch, handed over the London business and stepped away. He was, by all accounts, a man of real talent and real integrity, the last true Cartier craftsman in charge of a Cartier store. and he watched the empire his grandfather and great-uncles had built dissolve around him, piece by piece, until his own branch was the only one left. And then that went too. With that, after more than a century, no member of the Cartier family owned any part of Cartier at all. The name blazed on above the great stores in Paris, New York, and London. The founders' descendants were simply gone from it, out on the street like everyone else, able to walk past the windows but no longer able to call any of it their own. Eventually, all three scattered pieces were bought up and reunited under a single owner, a Swiss luxury conglomerate. Cartier was made whole again as a company, but it was whole in the hands of shareholders, not sons. The family had been written completely out of its own story. And here is the cruel arithmetic of it. Today, Cartier is one of the most valuable luxury names on the planet, generating an estimated $9 billion in sales a year, sitting near the very top of the global jewelry market. The wristwatch Louis invented, the tank, the panther, the red boxes in every capital city. All of it thrives. All of it earns fortunes. And not 1 cent of that empire belongs to a Cartier. The descendants of the 3 brothers who divided the world are today private citizens. One of them, a granddaughter of Jacques, found a forgotten trunk of family letters in a cellar and spent years writing down the history, because she realized that otherwise it would vanish. She has no role in the company. She is, in her own words, a keeper of the family's memory. The jewels were sold long ago. The stories are all that is left. 3 brothers were handed the whole world and told to conquer it. And they did. They built one of the greatest luxury empires in human history, a name spoken with reverence in every corner of the earth. Their children inherited that empire, and within a single generation, quietly, without a war or a crime or a single dramatic act, they let all of it slip through their fingers until nothing of the family remained but the name over the door, owned by someone else. The empire survived. It is worth billions. The Cartiers are gone from it. That is the strange and quiet tragedy at the heart of the most glamorous name in jewelry. Sometimes an empire is not destroyed by an enemy, or a scandal, or a curse written into a contract. Sometimes it is simply let go. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe to House of Ruin and leave a comment telling us which empire we should take apart next. A fashion house, a fortune, a famous name with something dark buried under it. There are more of these coming, and every single one begins the same way, with a name the whole world knows and a history almost nobody has heard.